real Renaissance man. That is the true definition of what he has done in his life. Former criminal defense lawyer, radio, TV personality, journalist, author, and has done so many things in his life that went into the seminary. So we'll find out about that. His newest book is called Road to a Miracle. We're joined by Mark Shaw today from Colorado. How are you, Mark?
Hey, good to talk to you.
Always good to talk to a fellow broadcaster. I know you did that for a while with ABC and CBS as well. So
certainly, when you just listed all those things I've done, it sounds like a guy who can't hold a job. and in some ways, that's probably true. So.
Well, I guess you could. I mean, I've similar. I guess anybody who does this for a living, at least part of their life, you have to kind of find other ways to make money once in a while, right?
Exactly.
Well, I really enjoy reading through your book. I know you've written so many books, but I think this one is probably the most personal one that you've ever done, right?
Yeah, it's. I kind of almost wish, Doug, that somebody else had written it. I write biographies for the most part,
right.
So doing this was quite unusual. As you may have read, I actually had chronicled the spiritual journey that I had been on since the Bob Knight incident back years ago, and put it away, and then all at once this miracle came along a year ago, so I picked up that manuscript and decided I better chronicle the whole thing at least, so that hopefully it could inspire some people to know that no matter how tough some times are for a while, there's always possibly a miracle around the corner.
It really is a great story you tell in the book, not only how the spiritual awakening, but you found out you had a daughter that you did not know about. Adam, that's a great kind of climax to the book.
Well, I was just looking this morning at the Amazon reader reviews up there, and I'm amazed at how many people have connected with the story through different connections in many ways. Some wanted to know the inside story of how I was involved with the Bobby Knight firing. Some people want to read the book and learn more about the aspects of fatherhood and what that can mean to somebody like me who never thought they would be a father. There are those who put comments up about adoption, and how they now may go out and find their birth parents. And so your audience probably wants to know, but basically what occurred here is many defining moments since the Bob Knight fiasco. I ended up losing my step-family over that through a messy divorce and some problems and things, and then this kind of a spiritual awakening came. I ended up in seminary of all places, then fell in love with a wonderful, caring woman, and all at once, a year ago, just a little over a year ago, received an email from a gentleman in Minnesota who said, "I think you're the father of my daughter," or of my wife, of my wife.
Right.
And that just changed my life completely.
And we get so many emails, that you read every day. Some go right to the spam file. I guess you probably thought that was probably one of those, ones that someone trying to sell you something at first, right? I mean, how do you know that's a legitimate email right off the top?
Yeah, you're always suspicious. Well, I'll tell you why. Because this gentleman began by saying, as you read, he was a fan of my books. And
right.
My books are very controversial. They're stop-and-think books, biographies that make people wonder at times. So I was so pleased that he was a fan of my books that I kept reading on. It turned out he wasn't a fan of my books. He just never read any of them. But as he said, it was the biggest lie of his life, the best lie of his life, because that made me keep reading, and finally he laid his cards on the table. He said, he had written a play. He wanted to find out about how to become published. If you go into Google, he knew my name. They at least knew my name, so he threw it into Google, and all at once, if you do that, my name pops up first as to how to become a published author, because I help people who want to become authors.
Right.
So he went to the website. He was kind of intrigued, and he saw, first of all, Doug, the gap in my teeth. And that's, exactly what my daughter Marnie has and my granddaughter Lucy has. And so he noticed that. He went to the Wikipedia page and saw that the age was right for me to have possibly fathered a child in 1968-69. One thing led to another, and he decided to take a shot and sent me that email.
Yeah, great story. It was either you or David Letterman.
There you go. Could have been David. Maybe you never know. Maybe David. The '60s were different, as you know, Doug. So The way that this occurred, it could happen to many other guys.
Oh, sure.
Well.
Not to make light of it, but I mean, he has that gap too. That's my case.
Sure he does. Absolutely.
But it is a great story, and we won't go over the whole Bobby Knight story. It's in the book, and you tell it so well. But do you have any feelings about him today? I mean, I think he kind of showed his true colors in that interview he did with Jeremy Schaap, that live interview. I mean, he's done it many times, but I think that one he really showed. I don't ever get the impression that he's ever done anything wrong in his life in his own mind.
Yeah, I think that's maybe his Achilles heel. I admit in the book I didn't handle the incident right. People may remember he grabbed my stepson, and
right.
All hell broke loose, and we both lost. He lost his job, and I ended up losing my stepfamily. Over the years, I've kind of watched what's happened with him. He keeps shooting himself in the foot. Nobody will give him a chance to coach anymore, which is kind of sad. But Doug, I sent, this book too is about forgiveness and about love and all of that. So I sent a book and a letter to Coach Knight. I told him I hope he enjoyed the book. I apologized for some of the actions that I took. And I said, I hope you do get a chance to coach again, and you can be the teacher, the kind of calm guy you were in the 90s. So maybe there'll be some inspiration for him there, but he's always had trouble apologizing for anything he's done, and as you know, the first step road, the road back to anything is admitting your own mistakes and things, and then you can go from there, but some people can't do that.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of him, obviously. I mean, you give him credit for the great teams he had, and maybe the graduation rate, that's all fine and dandy, but
Yeah.
John Wooden handled it the right way, and he never had people say a bad word about him. I think he had better results. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's a better role model, of course. It's tough. I was infected with what I call fame addiction. I got carried away with my fame and the celebrity part of that, and I think that's what happens to a lot of celebrities these days. They think they can play by different rules,
Yeah.
And then they get caught, and once you reach the top and you end up toward the bottom, boy, it's really difficult. So I think that's what Coach Knight has had to struggle with.
I want to talk about you going to the seminary in a minute, but you mentioned the biographies that you've written. I know one of them you did was on Don Larson. We had a chance about a month or so ago, Mark, to talk with great broadcaster Bob Wolf, who called Don Larson's Great Perfect Game. He wrote a book recently too, and I know you wrote a book about Don. That must have been kind of fun.
Well, I interviewed Bob Wolf for the book that I wrote with Don. It's Don's story, The Perfect Yankee, and talk about miracles. One day he was just this ordinary pitcher, and even the day after and on beyond that, he was just inconsistent and so on and so forth. But for that one day, Bob Wolf, I'm sure, told you he was the best there ever was. And so it's another example of a miracle coming along. People are going through tough times right now, economically and everything. It seems like the world's on fire.
Mm.
But I'll say this to them, you can come back from all that. If you admit your mistakes and you decide you're going to take a new path, anything is possible, and I'm sure Don would be the first one to say that, and Bob as well, because he's just a terrific fellow.
There's a video, I don't know if you've seen it, Mark, a company in, I think, Indiana has actually the TV broadcast of that game, where it has Mel Allen and Vin Scully and Bob Wolf doing a radio call. If you want to listen to that, of that entire game, you might want to check that out if you haven't gotten it already.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that they found that footage, because it was gone for a long time. Don lives up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. He's in his 80s now, but he still heads back to Yankee Stadium for the old-timers game. And, of course, one part of that was great was interviewing Yogi Berra, who caught the game. And so that was quite I could write a book about interviewing Yogi Berra, as you can imagine.
And Yogi, I mean, maybe a lot of those lines you said, maybe apocryphal, but he does talk that way, doesn't he? In a sense.
He does make sense. If you can get through some of that, it actually makes some sense at times,
Yeah, he's a great guy. Well, let's talk a little bit about Mark. You talk in the book about going to the seminary, maybe some people think later in life, but I think you found, like you said, a calling in your heart, I guess, to do that. Was that an easy decision to make or difficult?
No, it wasn't, and, my daughter recently said, of course, saying my daughter, or my granddaughter, or whatever, is all new to me, but she said, it took you 65 years to get your act together so that I could find you.
Ooh.
And she's right. I was a mess. I just was lost, and I'd lost who I think the real Mark Shaw was. You know what the responsibility is on the radio, and I got to, I got to the point where I used it as a bully pulpit, and just got lost. And so one thing came after another, and I ended up going to seminary. I actually called the woman there and said, "You let old people in with bad grades," because I was a terrible student in law school and at Purdue as well. But she said yes, and it was the cleansing for me. I learned about the great, the gifted writer Thomas Merton, a wonderful monk, and he talks about emptying yourself and deciding that you're going to change your path. And so that whole experience, and when I look back now, prepared me for the miracle. All these defining moments, including finding my wife and all of that. But seminary is a wonderful experience, and I would suggest it to anybody at any age, because whether you want to be a minister or not doesn't matter. It's the whole atmosphere of seminary that can change your life around.
Yeah, the way you describe it, you can kind of feel that.
Yes.
Where you were out in San Francisco. Before I let you go, Mark.
Maybe that's next for you, by the way.
Who knows? Maybe. Got a few years before I'm 65, but maybe I'll do it then. Who knows?
There you go. Exactly.
Got to ask you before we wrap up, Mark, being a broadcaster yourself, what do you make of the whole industry right now? I mean, the change in the way TV news is handled. I mean, you've done so much of that. Radio, that's in flux. Internet. What do you think?
Well, it's tough these days to be less than anything really severely controversial. The media now, that's one of the reasons I gave it up finally, is I just didn't want to be that kind of person who was so critical, so judgmental of other people. We've really lost the respect in that arena, unfortunately, and you're the exception to the rule, it sounds like, and there are others like you who still believe that radio has a responsibility to inform and entertain and not get into all this nasty discourse. So I'm somewhat disappointed with where the industry lies, and maybe as time goes by, we'll get rid of some of that. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I've always been of the school. I grew up listening to Larry King when he had the original radio show. Guys like Tom Snyder, who can be a little irreverent, but I never thought nasty. I mean, I think that's the kind of interview show you want to do. But yeah, you turn on the TV now, you just can't listen to it sometimes. So,
yeah, exactly.
I'm not a prude. I mean, I don't. Some of that discourse is kind of entertaining, but that's all you get, I think.
Sure. Well, that's one of the reasons about 5 years ago Lou and I gave up television. We don't even watch it anymore, and I'll tell you what, we don't miss it, and we find other things we do. We're radio listeners, so we're right in your pocket, you see.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. Radio is, I still think, the best medium. Even TV's great, but radio, I think, is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
We're talking with Mark Shaw. The name is the book is Road to a Miracle. Mark, give out a website. People get a hold of the book, or maybe send you a message if they like. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. The book is on Amazon and all the internet sites and in the bookstores as well. There is a Facebook page for Road to a Miracle where people can actually win a copy, and then my website is markshawbooks.net, and the email address is on there. I'd love to hear from people. I've got some wonderful messages of inspiration from the book, and as you know, with what you do, you hope that you're really providing people with some inspiration, some knowledge, some whatever that can help them get through this tough time. So I've just been so gratified with all of the comments about the book.
Yeah, great read. And Mark, look forward to talking to you again down the road sometime, and hopefully get to meet you in person. But thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Doug.